Lesson 27, The Powers of Congress. The federal government has two types of powers. Delegated powers. These are powers specifically expressed in the Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 8, numbers 1 through 17. And implied powers. These are powers that Congress claims for itself through the necessary and proper clause. That's Article 1, Section 8, number 18. Delegated powers are also called expressed powers because they are specifically written or expressed in the Constitution. And they are also called enumerated powers because they are listed in Article 1, Section 8, numbers 1 through 17. And enumeration is a listing. Okay, the 17 delegated powers of Congress. Article 1, Section 8, numbers 1 through 17. Number 1, Congress has the power to tax. 2, borrow money on the credit of the United States. 3, regulate interstate commerce. 4, establish uniform laws of naturalization and bankruptcies. 5, coin money. 6, punish counterfeiters. 7, establish post offices. 8, issue copyrights and patents. 9, establish federal courts. 10, punish pirates on the seas. 11, declare war. 12, raise and support an army. 13, to provide and maintain the Navy. 14, govern and regulate the Army and Navy. 15, send in the National Guard to enforce laws. 16, the training, maintaining, and regulating of the National Guard. And then 17, to regulate the nation's capital, which is Washington, D.C. These are 17 powers specifically granted to Congress in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Then, number 18 in Article 1, Section 8 states that Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. So it's this clause, which we call the necessary and proper clause, that gives the federal government implied powers. These are powers that are not specifically expressed in the Constitution, but they are assumed through the necessary and proper clause. In other words, in order to carry out its delegated powers, Congress has claimed for itself implied powers. We also call the necessary and proper clause the elastic clause of the Constitution. The elastic clause. And we say this because this part of the Constitution stretches or expands the power of Congress to do much more than what is actually stated in the Constitution. Congress has the authority to do whatever it may deem necessary and proper as long as what it does relates to one of its 17 delegated powers. And we'll give some examples of these implied powers in just a moment. Okay. Common examples of implied powers. Congress can create an Air Force, an Environmental Protection Agency, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Now, where in the Constitution does it say that Congress has the specific power to create these agencies, commissions? It does not. More examples: Food and Drug Administration, Social Security Administration, Medicare, OSHA, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Administration. As long as Congress, in the execution of one of its 17 delegated powers, can create an administration or agency, as long as it relates to one of the 17, it has the power to do it. More examples of implied powers of Congress. The USCIS, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Medicaid and other what we call entitlement programs, like Medicare, Social Security. Most of the federal government's implied powers have been claimed through the Commerce Clause. That is Article 1, Section 8, Number 3, the Commerce Clause, as well as the power to lay and collect taxes for the general welfare. That is Number 1, as well as provide for the national defense. It is through the Necessary and Proper Clause that the federal government has expanded its authority. That is why the Necessary and Proper Clause is often called the Elastic Clause of the Constitution. Again, it gives Congress the power to do more than what is specifically stated or expressed in the Constitution. Reserved powers of the states. The 10th Amendment, we know, says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states. That's in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. Powers prohibited to the states. Well, any power not given specifically to the Congress, nor denied to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. And this is where we get the concept of reserved powers, powers to the states, such as the authority to establish local governments, to run elections, to run schools, to grant licenses for professionals. In an earlier lesson at the outset of this course, we talked about some of these reserved powers of the states. Marriage requirements, gun licenses, tolling of roads, all of these would be reserved powers. Now, concurrent powers, these are the powers that are shared between the Congress or the federal government and the state governments. Powers of both. And we said that federalism was the sharing of powers between the different levels of government, sharing of powers and responsibilities. Well, the concurrent powers are shared by both levels of government. Examples of such would be both have the power to tax. We have federal taxes and state taxes. Establish laws, federal laws, state laws. Police power. We have the FBI to enforce federal laws. We have the SBI, the State Bureau of Investigation, to enforce state laws. We have the state police. Courts are concurrent powers. We have federal courts, state courts, providing for the welfare of citizens. That's a concurrent power. Maintaining roads. We talked about this earlier in the semester. We have federal roads, interstate highways, as well as state and local roads. Disaster relief. To maintain prisons. We have federal prisons. We have state prisons. Okay, let's take a moment to go through some questions to see if you can identify what power of government has that responsibility. Powers that are specifically enumerated to Congress or the national government are called blank powers. The answer would be delegated powers, specifically given to the national government. Powers and responsibilities left to state and local government are called reserved powers. Blank powers are powers shared by the federal government with the state and local governments. That would be concurrent powers. The necessary and proper clause allows Congress or the national government to exercise implied powers. Express powers of Congress are delegated powers. Express powers, delegated powers, enumerated powers, they're all synonymous. These are powers granted to Congress through the Constitution, specifically listed in the Constitution, specifically stated. The power to declare war. What type of power is that? That's a power delegated to the Congress. Only Congress can declare war. The power to coin or print money. That's a delegated power. Only Congress can print or coin money. The power to tax income. That's a concurrent power. Both the federal government and the states can tax income, so it's concurrent. The power to regulate or control interstate commerce or commercial activity, trade between the states, is a delegated power of Congress. The power to establish public schools, that's a reserved power. The power to create and support an army and navy is a delegated power of Congress. The power to enforce laws, that's a concurrent power, because we have federal laws and we have state and local laws. The enforcement of those laws is a concurrent power. The power to establish courts, that is another concurrent power, because we have federal courts and we have state courts. Concurrent power. The power to establish local governments, that's a reserved power of the states. It's not a federal power. It's a local, reserved power of the states. And that concludes lesson 27. And thank you for watching.